The Pacers finally lose. The Heat play against Damian Lillard, and three guys, Cam Thomas, Deandre Ayton, Dejounte Murray, have standout nights. Are any of them sustainable? Plus, the latest on James Harden. And there's new crazy courts in the NBA. You'll hear about it all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Halloween, everybody, and welcome into Locked On NBA. I'm Matt Moore wearing a Tony East costume. He's David Ramil, the host of Locked On Heat. Just kidding. I'm Tony East, the host of Locked On Pacers, and we've got a lot to get to from around the association today. Tons of games, as there is on Monday nights. Friday night's going to be a ton of games because it's the first in-season tournament night, and there's new courts we have to talk about, and there could be a James Harden resolution, sort of, coming this week. We'll explain why, but David, I'm going to lean into the bait. I'm going to lean into the offseason one more time because the Heat played against Damian Lillard today, and you cover the Miami Heat. Take us to Milwaukee. What'd you see?
Somewhat anticlimactic. Dame struggled at first. He's still kind of figuring his way out through the Milwaukee offense, although he did have some good moments there. Giannis kind of kicked it up a notch late in the game. They were up by as many as, I think, 25 at one point. So that was absolutely lending itself to the anticlimacticism of the game. Jimmy Butler playing in just his third game of the season. He missed all of the preseason, as Jimmy is wont to do. And then he kind of set out the second night of a back-to-back over the weekend, and he's been off. So I think that's a huge concern for Miami moving forward is what are we going to get out of Jimmy? And I know a lot of people, myself included, are kind of like, oh, we know that Jimmy kind of gets off to a slow start perhaps. And again, without the benefit of a preseason, maybe he's still shaking off some rust, but could this be the beginning of the end for Jimmy Butler? Is it a sign of decline? Are we just reading too much into it, considering it's only the fourth game of the season? But overall, it was a bad game for Miami until late in the fourth quarter when Tyler Herro kind of kicked it up a notch and he was able to lead a group of reserves to a furious comeback that fell just short. They wound up cutting that 25-point lead down to 6 late in the fourth quarter, and then some Giannis free throws helped them pull away, and eventually they sealed the game, which was never really in doubt. But it was not a pretty showing from Miami, and certainly a much more smooth showing for Milwaukee, who has looked a little clunky at times considering the amount of talent now in that roster.
Yeah, I think if Bam plays, it's a different game, obviously,
That's true.
especially against a team like Milwaukee. I personally find it very fitting to see Tyler Herro go off against Dame. I think that's poetic. Did he say anything? Did he talk after the game?
He did talk before the game saying how much he was looking forward to this game. Not necessarily about the matchup of Dame. I think he doesn't really see him. Obviously, they're not in the same stratosphere when it comes to NBA level of talent. And Tyler's still figuring out his way in the league, even in year 5 now. But he struggled over the weekend, and then he kind of looked forward to this game because he's from the Milwaukee area. And so that was a chance for him to come home and kind of show off. And he did. He looked really good tonight. He was hitting some tough shots. He was able to draw from some trips to the free throw line, which have been a weakness of his in the past. And he looked really, really good. And again, helping to lead that fourth quarter comeback with Jimmy, Kyle, Kevin Love, and again, no Bam Adebayo. So they were all sitting watching from the bench as Tyler led this comeback. I don't know that Tyler is as focused as people want to think about the offseason and everything else. Like, I don't doubt that it drives him, but I think he's kind of using it as fuel because that's what NBA players do. They need these kind of perceived slights in order to get them through the 82-game slog of a regular season. And I'm sure he's using it as motivation, but that doesn't necessarily change who Tyler is. Like, he is still – a conversation about him during the offseason was all over the map, and I think it went too far in one direction about what kind of a player he is when in reality he's still a very good young scorer and it's still somewhat prone to inefficiency and also some, deficiencies when it comes to the defensive end. But I think he's taking some steps to improve those, and we'll see whether or not he's able to build off of today's success.
I thought he got underrated in the summer, so I feel very vindicated today. And don't talk to me after his next game if it goes poorly. I will point to today's game as my vindication. I was at Pacers Bulls tonight. You can laugh at this being a feature game today, but the Pacers were one of 3 remaining undefeated teams in the East. And by the time you're listening to this, it could be just Boston, depending on if Orlando can hold off the Lakers. And what am I saying? That the last three are Pacers, Magic, Celtics. But either way, the Bulls showed the blueprint for beating the Pacers. Slow them down, grind the game down, make it a tough. The Pacers love to play fast, right? When they have to bog it down and play in the half court, they get a little messy. Halliburton couldn't get going. They could not get the high quality threes that they've been relying on all season. And late in the game, they isolated Halliburton a few times. DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine got to the line a ton in this game. That made it easy for the Bulls to get it done. They looked pretty comfortable in the fourth quarter despite being behind for much of the game. I think the big takeaway would be the Bulls are good when LaVine's good, right? He had 51 over the weekend, and that the Pacers, there is a blueprint to beat them despite their start looking pretty solid. They are, in fact, a human team. I have no idea if you have any opinions on either of these guys.
Well, Nick Vucevic had a big game there. What was the key for him going off, especially going up against a good defensive center in Miles Turner?
Yeah, 17 boards for Vooch. He kicks some butt. He always has done kind of well against Turner in his career. Turner spaced him out. Turner had 20 points himself, drew some fouls, but they've kind of always, their whole career has been a fun yin and yang battle. Vooch is really talented on the inside, muscular, bangs, and Turner's not as good against those kind of centers. On the other end, Miles Turner can shoot it, and Vooch is not mobile enough to get out on the perimeter. So they always seem to have big nights against each other because they're very well suited to have good offensive games playing against the other player. And Vooch was good. The post plays specifically were not working for the Bulls. Like if they just dumped it into him, it didn't work. I think he missed 9 or 10 shots, but when the ball just flowed to him or he could scoop up an offensive rebound and then make a play, he looked awesome. In the high post, he was great. He had 3 assists. Yeah, he was a big factor in this game, but it didn't feel, you didn't feel him as much as you felt DeRozan and LaVine, mostly because of the free throws, right? They combined to make 18. Just those two guys. That was a big story in the fourth quarter of this one.
How is Halliburton's season going so far? Because he seemed, off of a nice summer with the FIBA team, and obviously he was building off an all-star selection last year. A very, very good player, obviously, but he struggled somewhat tonight against the Bulls. Has he been a little bit, inconsistent so far to start the season?
Another star that Alex Caruso finds a way to make uncomfortable. Yeah, he was great in their first 2 games. He said he's kind of having problems where it feels like for a couple moments every game he coasts, and then he just like, oh yeah, I'm really good. He just like turns it on for a couple minutes and dominates, and the Pacers just take over to win. That's what they did against Cleveland. They smoked the Wizards right after his best stretch. Right, he's looked really good. A heckler got him going against the Cavs too, which was really fun. So yeah, his stats look awesome. He's probably haven't looked after this game, but he's probably averaging 21 and 13 right now, which is insane. But the shot was not falling in this one. Caruso played a part in that, but the Pacers in general were just off. 12 of 46, I believe, is what they finished from deep. I mean, that missing 34 threes is rough, both from an accuracy perspective and because those longer rebounds can help the other team, right? Steve Kerr talks about that a lot with the Warriors. So yeah, he's been good this season. Definitely better than last year. You can tell he's got a little more, I hate this word, but swagger to him. And the bravado is there on the court. When he wants to turn it up, he does. 3 other big guys I want to mention their stat lines today. Nets get their first win. They beat the Hornets. Not necessarily an impressive opponent win, but Cam Thomas, 33 points today. If you've been keeping up with Cam Thomas this season, that's not surprising, but he has just been the offense for the Nets a lot this season. The Blazers get their first win over the Raptors. Yikes for the Raptors. DeAndre Ayton, 10 points, 23 rebounds for the Blazers in their first win of the season. And the Hawks beat the Timberwolves. Weird start to the season for the Hawks. Dejounte Murray, 41 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. All those guys are important to their team in some way or another this season. Which one do you feel like is the most sustainable and important for the rest of the season?
I think it's probably Dejounte Murray. At least that's the way I'm leaning right now, is because I think it's one we've seen him have, if not necessarily 41 point games, in terms of consistent production. I think he has shown he can be an all-star. He is a very good player, and I think he kind of makes Atlanta's ceiling that much higher if he can continue that sort of production. So to me, that seems like it's much more sustainable. Cam Thomas, we've seen him go through these kind of multi-game heaters before, and then he tapers off. Still kind of, I think, somewhat finding his role on this roster to some degree. They went through some changes. They weren't without Nick Claxton tonight. He's going to get his playing opportunity regardless, but I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain this level of production more consistently. So as far as DeAndre Ayton, I mean, he struggled too. Like they have not been able to get him going. That he has not been able to find any sort of comfortable role right there. And they haven't, there's little expectation out of Portland. So I don't know how much they're going to be focusing on trying to get DeAndre going and have much more consistent production. So of all the three, I think the most sustainable is probably Dejounte Murray. What do you think?
I think Dejounte is the most sustainable. Settled in now. Quinn Snyder's a good coach for his style of play and for the Hawks in general. So I'd say sustainable, it's him. But I actually want to give Cam Thomas a little bit here because of the Nets structure, right? To me, the Nets blueprint for success this season was be a top 3 to 5 defense and then just pray you score enough points to keep up, because if you looked at their roster, it didn't look like they had the punch to score. Well, if Cam Thomas is this guy, 36 opening night, 30 in the second game, 33 today. So through 3 games, he scored 99 points. Like that's crazy.
It's monstrous,
yeah. And you're right. He has done this before. Like, what was it, right after the trade deadline last year? I want to double check to make sure I have.
Yeah.
It's right before the trade deadline. Yeah. 44, 47, 43 for 3 in a row last year. So he has done this before, but if he can be like, he's got these weird stutter step floaters, he can get the foul on. Like, if he can be a guy that actually gets their offense from like perceived to be awful to perceived to be okay, that's a big deal for the Nets, even though there are definitely sustainability questions. And I agree on Ayton. We kind of know what he is.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, let's put a pin in our conversation, talk a little bit about James Harden and the potential of a trade coming up in the next segment before we get into the in-season tournament and the new look on the hardwood for a lot of teams out there, for every team in the NBA. You're listening to Locked On Heat. Or Locked On NBA, I should say. But anyway, today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL and NBA season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action, especially now with the NBA season in full swing. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL and NBA season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL and NBA.
We're back here on Not Locked On Heat, on Locked On NBA, to talk about James Harden, because you guys can't get enough of him. But I actually think this week could be finally an actual real update moment in the James Harden saga. And I will tell you why. Do you believe me when I say that? Because I feel like we've heard that a lot.
I believe everything you have to say, Tony. I know you. I know you to be.
That is also a stupid idea.
I was just going to say you're impeccably honorable, but no, I guess now I have to question my decision-making process.
A lot of nonsense in camp and preseason about is he there, is he not, whatever. But this is a little different to me because his end of camp absences have now been reportedly been excused absences, which is fine. Hope James Harden is doing well. If the reported reasoning is correct. But now he's back with the team. Tim Bontemps of ESPN reported 2 days ago now from you listening to this that James Harden went through pregame walkthrough before the Sixers home opener. They played the Blazers. Obviously, since he's been away, that he didn't play. But he sat on the bench. He was there at the game. You could see him sitting there with the team. And so this week, the expectation would then be, I'm double-checking Bontemps' story to see if he has that in there, but I would assume, at least as an outsider, that this week the expectation would be, hey, James Harden practices. And that leads to playing in games. And so if James Harden's end goal is not to play, throw a little fit, try to get somewhere else, we would learn that this week. And if his game plan is to do what he did in Houston and come in and kick some freaking butt for the first 10 games and then do the thing when he says, I don't want to be here anymore, we'll also find out what his plan, his next step, I think, will become obvious this week between hitting the court and playing and being in the best shape of his life, like he said in the summer, or not sitting out, or excuse me, and instead sitting out and not playing and making this a big thing. And the Sixers have been rolling, and Tyrese Maxey looks great, and Embiid just had an insane stat line in 3 quarters. He could disrupt that if he wanted. So I think we'll actually see something. We'll learn something in the next couple days about if Harden thinks the best move is playing and playing well and upping that value and forcing the Clippers or whoever to go all in, or if he thinks the move is make this uncomfortable, to use the Daryl Morey term, and try to get out that way.
Where do you think he's leaning? I know where I stand on this, but how do you think he is leaning in terms of trying to force his way out, or is he going to just continue to sit?
I think he'll pull the Houston playbook again. We've seen him do it already where I think they played the Kings that year in the first game and he had like 48 points or 40. So crazy. He was awesome, right?
Right.
And I think that was the year they had John Wall as their point guard and they were like salvaging on to the Wall era or the Harden era,
Yeah.
excuse me, trying to win. And he didn't want to be there. He wasn't there for camp, right? That year too. He was at like the little baby concerts and stuff. And then he played really well.
Yeah.
And then he kind of slowly tapered off. And then I forget who they played. He said after the game, like, this situation is not tenable. I'm paraphrasing, but like this can't go on any longer. And then he got traded like 3 days later to the Nets. And so what he did basically is prove like when I'm trying, I'm still really good, but I don't want to be here, right? Like slowly over the course of however many games that was. Because we've seen that playbook from him and it worked, I kind of think he'll do that again, but he does have different reps now, I believe. So
Yeah.
it could change. His team dynamic is different, but that also seems like it would be a successful plan to me because a good way for him to actually get the trade would be to be good enough that the Clippers up their offer in a way that the Sixers would accept it. So that seems like what I guess he will do, but I don't know. There's a lot of ways it could go.
Yeah, I don't know that he's that kind of player. I don't know that he can have those kind of monster
That
performances
is true.
consistently enough, especially like at some point, if he's trying to hijack the offense and he just put up shots to say, look at me, I'm still James Harden of old, I can still be just as good. How do you accept that with your Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey, who's having a really good start to the season? So
Right.
I don't know if those players around him right now, they're all comfortable. Players tend to side with other players when it comes to contractual negotiations and things of that sort. And we've heard nothing but positives out of every other teammate from Philadelphia there about the James Harden situation. They accept it. They don't like it, but it is what it is. And they've continued to play without him. I don't know that they'd be as comfortable if he goes out there and just says, you know what, I'm just going to take over games and do what I do. Screw you, MVP Joel Embiid. Screw you, young up-and-coming player Tyrese Maxey. I'm just going to put up 30 to 40 shots and just take over the game. That doesn't seem likely to happen either. So I don't know how realistic it is that he can go. I think this just winds up being another kind of failed attempt one way or the other. Like I don't think there's anything left in his arsenal to show in terms of trying to force his way out. And even trying to, if he plays, I don't know how it helps him because we already, I think, know who James Harden is at this stage in his career. And it's not to say that he's a bad player. He's just not as good as he once was. And I don't think he's as good to kind of hold the franchise hostage the way he has. So I don't know that he's likely to go that route.
Yeah, and the argument in your favor too would be the Sixers just did with Ben Simmons what they could do with Harden if he doesn't play. Okay, great. We will wait. We have no problem waiting.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. They said, okay, great. And Simmons didn't play, and they waited till February to see if something changed. And you know what changed? Ironically enough, James Harden requested a trade away from the Brooklyn Nets, which is how we're here. So, let's pretend that the Harden doesn't play this week, and whatever happens for the next couple months, and they wait till February 1st, and then all of a sudden someone good gets hurt on, I make a team up like the Bulls or the Knicks or something, right? Someone who has some stuff to trade, but not like too much, and also wants to be good this year, right? They could go, well, we're now a little more interested in James Harden than we would have been otherwise. And then there's another trade partner, and then the value goes up for Daryl Morey. This is exactly what happened with Ben Simmons, and it worked out for them. Although I didn't get to say when we were talking about Cam Thomas, Ben Simmons had a good game today. But either way, that is also something that James Harden has to be wary of. Like it could last that long if he doesn't play. So it's like there's a lot of dynamics at play, but either way, everybody's playing their cards and everybody's running out of deadlines to force moves. We'll see what happens this week, but I think we actually will learn something in the next few days for the first time in a while instead of just like, he's there, he's not there, whatever, it doesn't matter.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, I know a lot of Heat fans have actually been clamoring for the acquisition of Harden, and it's been a topic on our show. And they've been one of the few teams to, recently they made a trade with Andre Iguodala after he got traded to the Memphis Grizzlies, and he kind of sat out most of the season, and then they acquired him right before the trade deadline back in 2020. And of course, that season wound up getting cut short because of the COVID-19 outbreak and everything else that happened there. And he was a big part of their title run in the Orlando bubble. But I don't know if Harden is necessarily on Miami's radar, but considering how sluggish they've looked to start the season. The fact that they're not getting much out of their point guard position. They're starting, very old Kyle Lowry, and he has not been exactly dynamic, although he was solid tonight in that loss in Milwaukee. I don't know if is there another team that you think could kind of creep in there and find their way? We've talked about this on the show, like a team that might engage for Harden, even if there's no plan on re-signing him. That's what Harden wants. Obviously, is that long-term deal. It's not much of a risk, right? Because you're taking him on, and if he doesn't work out this season, well, you let him walk in free agency, and that's all there is to it. So I think that's a big part of the argument that a lot of Heat fans are saying is that, maybe you can go ahead and get him. He's an innings eater during the regular season, and regardless of his struggles in the postseason, you've got, in Miami's case, Jimmy Butler, some other team perhaps that might look at that as a low-risk rental for James Harden.
I wasn't kidding about the Bulls. I mean, part of me wonders, like, if there's a 3-team trade where Harden goes to the Clippers and Levine goes to the Sixers. If the Bulls season doesn't go well, they looked okay tonight because I watched them up close. But it's really hard. Like, a lot of teams feel pretty settled at point guard, right? And so finding a lead ball handling team that needs a lead ball handler and wants to be good this year and has stuff to trade and doesn't care if they lose him. I mean, the list is 1, 2. Like, it's not many. There's not many. That is another hurdle, and that's why Daryl Morey being patient and hoping that list goes from very small to just a little bigger could be significant. Let's talk about some ugly to me courts.
We'll talk about those ugly courts in the next segment. Before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, because Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events near you. With their last-minute deals, they're all in prices, their best price guarantee, and a feature I love, which is their views from your seat, so you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting for whatever event that you're buying tickets for. You know if there's going to be an obstruction. You know if you're going to get a good view of the band or the concert or whatever it is that you're going to be. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. Again, they've got the great feature. See exactly where you're going to be sitting from. They know all the prices for whatever seats that you're looking for, so you get the best price available. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just a couple taps on your phone if you download the Game Time app. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. But again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You're listening to Locked On NBA.
We're back here on Locked On NBA to talk about the last bit of news we got from the league on Monday, which is the in-season tournament just got new courts. And I like the concept that they're going with here, David. The point here being that the group stage games for the in-season tournament and the first round of the playoff bracket, how is a fan who shows up to that game who doesn't know about the in-season tournament, how are they going to know it's an in-season tournament game? Let's put something on the court. Let's change the court. I get that. So when I heard that could be something that happens, I thought maybe they'll put a picture of the trophy on there. Maybe they'll put the word NBA in-season tournament on the court like they do in the finals. Maybe not quite so grand because it's not the finals, but something like that. So a fan could go, oh, there's text on the court. I wonder what that is, and figure it out. The NBA said, F that. Let's go bolder and bigger and off the wall. Their exact language in their PR tweet was used for group play in the quarterfinals. The courts showcase a bold and distinctive design, making it clear to fans when a game carries tournament implications. And that is certainly true. For example, the Hawks, this is just alphabetical, baby blue with gold trim. The Celtics, dark green. The Bulls court is all red with a darker red middle. They are colorful. David, what do you think of them?
I don't mind it. I really don't. I know they're a little jarring, and I am still waiting to see what the finished product looks like with actual basketball being played on them. But I don't have a problem necessarily with the league trying something different to get this off the ground. We can't have it both ways. Like, peripheral fans, not you and I who love the game and cover it for a living, we don't feel this way about the 82-game regular season, although there are substantial hurdles to trying to cover the teams and try to watch as much basketball as possible. But for those peripheral fans that don't necessarily care about the regular season, it can be a little bit challenging. And so the idea of an in-season tournament might start to generate some interest where before maybe there might not necessarily have meant as much. I know some of the criticism has been, well, what's the incentive for the regular season fan if they don't really know what's going on, if there's no benefit for their team winning? I think every fan wants to see their team win, and maybe it won't count for much, but I think you want to see your team come out victorious. And if you got this clear delineation of games with these respective courts that are bright and colorful and different, maybe, I don't know, change the approach. I don't know how it's going to play out. And that's the whole thing, is that nobody knows how it's going to play out, but we're all rushing to offer our criticism and judgments of this that hasn't even happened yet. I remember how people felt about the idea of the play-in tournament a few years ago. There were a lot of detractors. People said, no, this is never going to work. This is stupid. Why would you open this up? And I think it's been nothing but successful. So I'm kind of in a wait and see approach on the in-season tournament to see how it plays out, and to kind of see, again, from that fan's perspective, consider these games and whether or not they're more worthwhile watching.
The actual in-season tournament itself, the group play part of it, playoff bracket, finals in Vegas, I love that. I love the idea of making the regular season more competitive. I like, at the bare minimum, for me personally, there's one extra NBA game where players are trying. Great. I like that, right? That's why I do this. Yeah. I like watching games where NBA players try and do their thing. That's great. And I think that, it'll be like they're trying to avoid it being gimmicky, right? And so it'll feel that way at first because it's inorganic right now. It's never happened. But I think there'll be two things that change that. One is it'll feel that way. And then if your favorite team wins, you're going to be thrilled, right? Like, yeah, that's cool. We did it. And so one fan base will go nuts. And then the next year, it's less gimmicky already because there's like a group of excited people. And then it'll expand pretty quick from there. And two, this will take a while, but there will be a time where every player in the league has only been in a league where the in-season tournament exists, right? Like every time I think about Pacers rookies, like they've never been in a league before the tournament. Like at that point, it'll feel so normal too that it'll also be a thing. Like I think it's going to be awesome. And I love the idea of trying to make the games more important, adding a prize to it. I don't want the league to lean so far into it being so different and separate that they get, I mean, maybe I'm biased because the Pacers court is so cerulean that it's like, it looks like a swimming pool almost. That I'm like, man, that's too bright. Or like, for those of you who haven't seen the Pelicans one, if I could flash on the screen, I would on YouTube. It is dark purple and lime green. It is wild. Like that feels like a step too far to me, even though I like the idea of making the courts distinctive, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I see. I'm looking at the Pelicans one right now, and it is, yes, bright purple with a green stripe. So that's the consistent thing, is that from the painted area along one baseline all the way through the center of the court to the opposing baseline is a distinctive stripe of some kind for every team.
You know what I love about them, though? The trophy in the middle is awesome. Yes. I want that back, like they used to do in the finals.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and you've got every team has their logo in there. Now, inexplicably, and I see your concern here, you've got, for the Pacers, Indy in bright font of some kind there. That, I've got to say, that looks a little cheesy to me. I'm not a big fan of that one. And I could see what the concerns, like, again, between the bright blue, the yellow striping all the way across, and then just that 4-letter word, Indy, in the center there. Not ideal, I would say. I think you could have done it a lot better with just Pacers, maybe.
Some look great. Like, truly, I really like some of them. I just like, the other thing is too, like a static image, I can view it and be like, okay, this is colorful. But like when there's players moving and I have to like move my head and move my eyes, like how is that going to feel? Is there going to be enough contrast between the jerseys? I'm worried about nothing. This could be a non-problem at all, but they are, if you have not seen them, get yourself 5 seconds to look these up, because they are like a basketball court you've never seen before. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking at all of these right now, and like some of them are kind of head scratcher. Like the Denver one has 5280 across there because of the Mile High City. The Clips. Now, over the Clippers there, it's just got clips. Some teams just have their logo on there, like Golden State and Memphis and Milwaukee. Minnesota has that too. And of course, here's the purple one. I'm just going through these. These are, some of them are kind of jarring there. Like the bright red court of the Heat and Philadelphia 76ers. There's a light purple one for the Phoenix Suns, and it says El Valle, I guess, which is the valley in Spanish. So I guess they're leaning into the Latino market in the Phoenix area. That's again a little confusing about some of the decision-making process. H-Town for the Houston Rockets there. I mean, some of them do look good. I like the dark gray one of the Toronto Raptors. I've seen that now. So it's kind of a mixed bag, some nice ones, some head scratchers there. But overall, again, the theory is let's try something different. Let's give it a chance. And I'm sure it's going to wind up being something that pops on the screen. And again, I think if it adds that kind of level of such a clear-cut difference from the regular in-season games or regular season games, then this is going to stand out a little bit more, and fans will eventually learn to gravitate towards that. You bring up a really good point about rookies and fans too, like fans that are just tuning into this tournament. For them, it'll just be, oh, okay, that's just what you do. You have a bright court, you know, maybe it's a little cheesy, but you kind of lean into it, you enjoy it, and you embrace the process.
That is certainly true. And if it sucks and it flops and these look unwatchable on TV, at most it's 3 games per team, so they can flush it and move on. And so that is at least a good thing for the league. Although I think it will go over well. Things always seem to go over better than pessimists think. Yeah. For more, you can check out that via Zach Lowe on ESPN. He has more of the why from the league, which was pretty cool to see them dive into that. David, this was great. Where can people follow the Heat and you in the interweb space?
You can always follow me at DRamil13, or you can follow the Heat at Locked On Heat. We've got daily coverage of Jimmy Butler's struggles and Tyler Herro continuing to be one of the best scorers on the planet.
You want coverage of one of Tyler Herro's best friends, Oshkosh, Wisconsin natives, Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers. Locked On Pacers is the way to go, and I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East. Tomorrow here on Locked On NBA, you'll get your usual suspects, John Corrales and Jake Madison, getting you into the month of November. Somehow, October went by way too fast. Thank you all a ton for listening to Locked On NBA today. We'll be back tomorrow.
Stay safe.